Hello and welcome to your Saturday preview of all the action at this year's PDC World Championship. It's the 21st of December, which means we have 3 more days of action until the 3-day Christmas break, and round 1 and 2 will conclude. And we're rapidly going to see more round 2 than round 1 ties in the remaining sessions, and all the big names coming into play now. So the quality should generally lift a little bit, which I always think sometimes can make it a little bit harder from a betting perspective because the players are a little bit more exposed and known about. But equally, there are some different kind of angles that we can look to exploit as well when we make our picks. Well, firstly, a quick word on Friday's selections. Wasn't a good day for me after a good day on Thursday. Brings you back down to earth quite quickly, this game, doesn't it? Tough going yesterday. Didn't have all that much to shout about. Jeffrey Deswan's 180s did absolutely cruising. But the big one for me was Goto. I was waiting on Goto for a little multiple, and it never really looked like clear. He didn't seem to enjoy that slow pace against Mickey Mantle today. It was a bit of a slog for both players, whereas last year he seemed to really enjoy playing the likes of Ian White and Ryan Searle, where he was in full flow and playing some good stuff. It wasn't to be for the Japanese player yesterday. Hopefully better coming today then. 8 games across the 2 afternoon and evening sessions. We'll dive straight into it with Karel Sedlacek taking on Rhys Griffin. And I'm going to back Sedlacek to have the most 180s in this game. He's quite a big outsider in that market at 17-10, which surprised me a little bit because although Griffin has the better annual numbers, which I suppose this market is mainly derived from, I think Sedlacek just has so much more big stage experience, and he's had a good time of things on the Pro Tour, really. He's should secure his tour card. He definitely will if he wins this game, but he's possibly done enough anyway. He's just above Robert Owen at the moment in that 63rd spot. Given Steve Beaton's handing his card back in, he'd be very unlucky, Sedlacek, to lose his card from this position. But he'll want to make sure by beating Rhys Griffin that he secures it for another year. Rhys Griffin's had a pretty underwhelming first year on the Pro Tour. He's only won 20 grand. A lot of first round exits at the Pro Tour. I think he's exited 8 of the last 9 Players' Championship events in the first round, so that'll have frustrated him. But we've actually seen some of his best performances in qualifying for events. He qualified for the World Series of Darts finals, winning 3 or 4 games. He's done the same here at the World Championship, beating Jose de Sousa on his way to qualifying. But can he transfer that game to the big stage? That's the big question for Griffin. And I think even in his qualifying matches for here and the World Series, don't really get above the 90 average mark. So I'm not sure that if Sedlacek brings 75% of his stage game, that Griffin is going to be able to compete. Now, as I say, just like a maximum, a little bit more than Sedlacek on his annual numbers. But I think I just have a lot more confidence in backing Sedlacek to perform on the big stage. So that's the reason for this bet. I was a little bit surprised how big Sedlacek is in this market. 17-10 to hit the most maximums. I do think there's a chance that Griffin just doesn't really turn up. We shall see, but I thought that was a play at the prices. Next game is Richard Veenstra, one of my favourite players, up against Alexis Toilo of the Asian Tour. And this is a no-bet game for me. Veenstra is about 1-5, 1-6 to win the match. Toilo actually topped the Asian Tour Order of Merit, and followers of this channel and my columns and stuff will know that I generally think Asian players are underrated in this market. But I just have a few question marks over Toilo. Although he topped the Order of Merit, he doesn't seem to have done that well in the big tournaments out in Asia. He looks like a man more that's a model of consistency on the floor and stuff. So I think the fact that he hasn't been beyond the quarterfinals of the Asian Championship, for example, will concern me a little bit with Ali Pali. And he might just be one of these players that needs a year or two to adjust to the surroundings. Of course, if he doesn't and he brings his A game, he could push Veenstra close. But Veenstra is vastly experienced, isn't he? And he was on debut at Ali Pali last year, and he won a couple of games, beating Ben Robb and surprising Kim Huybrechts, eventually going out to Michael van Gerwen, but no shame in that. So was impressed enough with how he handled surroundings. He's very, very experienced, as I said, BDO stalwart. And yeah, I just think he probably gets the job done here. But there's enough risk factors with Toilo and enough unknowns for me to no bet this game. Well, Lok Yin Lee was the star of our Thursday selections, winning at 6-1, and he's back in action today for his second round clash against Brendan Dolan, the veteran Northern Irishman, who had a really good run here last year, beating the likes of Gary Anderson along the way, eventually dumped out by Luke Littler, but Brendan will have been delighted with his efforts at Alexandra Palace last year. He's a vastly experienced competitor once again, a lot of experienced names in action today. And you would think he'd get the better of Lok Yin Lee. The market suggests so, but Lee was impressive, wasn't he, in the way he took advantage of a bad day at the office, particularly on the doubles for Chris Landman. But he seemed to grow into that game, grow in confidence. He had the crowd chanting Lee after every sort of half-decent score he produced, which was enough to unsettle Landman, I think. And he should take confidence from that into this game. I could see him starting quite quickly here, which is why the 13-8 about him winning the first set against Brendan Dolan, who's yet to play a game this year, is of interest. We saw something similar yesterday with Stephen Bunting against Kai Gotthard, and you wouldn't have thought that Gotthard sort of A-level would trouble Bunting. However, Gotthard started really well, really confidently, because he'd had that first win against Alan Suter. I think took that first set, went on to lose 3-1. I could see a similar pattern occurring here. So I'm going to take Lee to win the first set for a point at 13-8, but I'm also going to have a half point on via the Bet365 Bet Builder tool, Lee to win the first set and Dolan to then win the match 3-1, which obviously a little bit more of a play for the ambitious types among us. But I thought it was worth a very small go, that, because that's kind of how I could see the game state panning out in this one. I think Dolan, as he warms up, he's a very consistent competitor. I'd expect him to just be maybe a dart ahead of Lee in the scoring phase a lot of the time. And if Lee does win that first set, it's a whole different challenge trying to sustain that level. So 15-2 about that one for half a point. Final game of the afternoon is Chris Dobey, who starts his campaign against Alexander Merkx. And I've got to say, Merkx beat Stephen Burton 3-0 yesterday. Burton was the first of my anti-post picks to get turned over. And it was really flat, really, really disappointing from Stephen Burton. No hiding from it there. But I didn't think Merkx did all that much to impress on his way to winning 3-0. I mean, a 3-0 win on your debut is impressive, however you get it. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to discredit him too much, but we have to look at the raw performance there. Average of 78, a lot of missed doubles, because that included 4 180s, and he still only managed to average 78, which tells you all you need to know about the rest of the game. It was a really pretty turgid affair. And it was only because Burton averaged 74, 75 that he managed to kind of convert that into a 3-0 win. I think it flatters him a little bit. I think Chris Dobey will have watched that game and will be very encouraged, because he's had a little bit of a torrid time on the TV recently, but I do think he's a competitor for this title. He's a really, really solid player who brings his best to Alexandra Palace, and his 4 averages last year, 103, 102, 102 and 99, all over an extended format, of course, as well. So he really is a mark of consistency, Dobey. I think if he's anywhere near those high 90s, Merkx isn't going to be able to live with him. This is my most confident selection of the day here. Chris Dobey, 3-0 correct score, which is just a shade under evens with Ladbrokes 17-20. I think that's very fair. On to the evening session then, and we kick off with what could be a belter of a game. Danny Noppert taking on Ryan Joyce, and I'm going to back this to go all the way here at just shy of 2-1 over 4.5 sets. Joyce, we've already seen him in action against Darius Labanauskas. He was embroiled in a little bit more of a battle than I expected him to be. Labanauskas played quite well, but Joyce warmed to the task. He rose to it in the big moments and got over the line 3-1 in the end, but he's kind of battle hardened now, and he comes in the underdog against Noppert. But I always think Joyce is a dangerous man to face, particularly when he's been kind of written off in most quarters. And Noppert, like I say, coming in a little bit cold, could be a similar situation there where Joyce is warming up in the first game, gets him ahead early, and Noppert comes back at him, because you'd probably say Noppert is the more consistent scorer of the two, but not by a lot. And Joyce is just a very rounded player, a hard man to get rid of. And I think he'll push Noppert very, very closely. These are two quite similar players in that they have a rounded game, maybe unspectacular, don't get the plaudits they deserve, but very dangerous and can beat anyone on any given day. So yeah, I could see this one going really, really deep. 15-8 about it going all the way seems fair. 7-4 seems to be the par price up for these games to go 5 sets, but yeah, 15-8, a little bit more juice in that for a game that I consider very much could go all the way. Next up is Nick Kenny taking on Raymond van Barneveld, and I'm going to back the upset here. Nick Kenny, again, just shy of 2-1, 19-10 with Betfair to beat the veteran Dutchman. And I think that that is worth a go on what we've seen from Nick Kenny, on what we've heard from Nick Kenny. I just think he's in a really good spot here. He's trying to defend his tour card. If he wins this game, he'll probably keep his tour card. If he doesn't, he probably has to go back to Q School. Now, you could take that as He's going to be nervous. He's going to struggle to hit his levels. We've seen similar with Connor Scutt a couple of years ago where he played Going Price and didn't produce his best. But let's be honest, Raymond van Barneveld is more beatable than Going Price was a couple of years ago. And I think the way that Nick Kenny is approaching this, it really encourages me. He's just happy to have got that first win. He did it in good fashion as well. Beat Stobunts quite comfortably. Finished off with a lovely 170 checkout to win it. So he's confident, but what I liked when I heard from him in his post-match press conference was talking about how he felt like Barney had written him off, was already talking about a clash with Luke Humphries in round 3, felt like he'd been disrespected by Peter Wright as well, and he said that it fires him up to perform. I think Nick Kenny's someone that's always had the talent, but just never really translated it to the stage consistently. So I think getting that win in the way he did against Stobunts, it puts him in such a good mindset, and if he feels like this is a free shot, and if he's made peace with the fact that he may lose his card and have to go back to Q School, which it certainly sounds like to me, then I think couple that up with the fire in his belly here, he could catch Barney cold here. And if he plays like he did in patches against Bunt, I think this is going to be really, really close. So I'm going to have a couple of points on Kenny to beat Barney here and spring what will be one of the first really big shocks of this tournament, I think. Next up is the match that half the nation will be tuning into, I'm sure, before watching Fury versus Usyk. It's Luke Littler making his tournament bout against Ryan Meikle. And I think all the kind of casual darts fans that tune in might be a little bit underwhelmed by the pace of Ryan Meikle. He is quite a slow, methodical type, isn't he? And that could unsettle Littler a little bit, I think. But all in all, you'd think he's going to have way too much class for Meikle. He tends to bring his best to the stage, and he is a showman, Littler, and he doesn't like to let people down. So I'm expecting Littler to win this relatively comfortably. I mean, you could go down the route of backing the 3-0 at 4-7 and trying to boost it up with some 180s and whatever on the bet builder, but I'm just going to watch this match and enjoy it, really. Expecting a comfortable Littler win, expecting a few 180s, but equally, as long as he gets through, gets the job done against a potentially tricky, awkward opponent, I'm sure he'll be happy. Meikle did, in the end, dig it out against Fallon Sherrick, but it was nothing to make you think that he was going to be in a place with his game to stun Littler, was it really? So it's a no bet from me on that one, but looking forward to seeing Littler in action. There might be an even better game at the final match of the night. This is one I've been looking forward to ever since Connor Scutt won his first round match. He takes on Damon Heta, a practice partner, a good friend, and this is Damon Heta, one of the best players in the world, against Connor Scutt, one of the most rapidly rising talents in the world. So all the kind of ingredients are there for this to be a great clash. The only other clash I was this excited about that we've already seen was Scott Williams versus Nico Springer, and that certainly delivered. So I'm hoping that this is going to also bring the action and bring the fireworks. And both of these two love a maximum, don't they? Damon Heta, so consistent on that treble 20. He does switch to the treble 19 a little bit, which is why Scutt is probably the favourite in the 180 market. But to be honest, there's not a lot between them. I see this going beyond 3 sets. I think it'll be a 3-1 or a 3-2. I don't completely rule Connor out of causing an upset here, particularly given he averaged over a ton in his first game of the tournament. But yeah, I'm going to play this for them both to hit the 180s and have a bit of a 180 fest here. This has landed in quite a few matches when the players both get in a rhythm and a flow. The 180s do tend to come, particularly with the high quality players. Look at Springer versus Williams. Look at Diswan versus Hempel last night. Another good example of the pace suiting both, I think. 6 180s apiece there. I think Heta and Scutt can easily produce over 4.5 180s each, which is quite comfortably odds against at 13-10. I'd be very surprised if they don't both rise to the occasion, these two. The fact that they're practice partners already tells you that they quite like each other's pace and they feel comfortable with each other. Now, sometimes when you're playing a friend, that can be of a detriment to the quality. I don't get that impression with these two. I think they're both going to bring their best. I think it's going to be a really enjoyable watch, and may the best man win kind of territory. Obviously, Dart's now sponsoring Connor, but Damon's been a good friend of the channel for a few years. So wishing them both the best of luck. Really looking forward to watching it. But I do think there's a good bet in there. Both Damon Heta and Connor Scutt to hit over 4.5 180s each is 13-10 with Bet365. Okay, then. So that it rounds off the Saturday action. Let me just get my best bets for you up on the screen. So, afternoon first, Sedlacek hit the most 180s versus Rhys Griffin is 17-10. That just looks a bit big for me, given the experience of the Czech man. Lok Yin Lee to win the first set versus Brendan Dolan is 13-8. I'm also going to have a little half point speculatively on him to win that first set but lose 3-1, which I could see happening similar to the Bunting game yesterday at 15-2. My strongest bet of the day, far and away, is Chris Dobey to beat Alexander Merkx 3-0. It's just shy of even money, hoping to double the money there. And regardless of what happens in the rest of the session, that will lock in a profit, or so that is the plan. Anyway, then on to the evening. No bet in the Luke Littler Ryan Meikle game, but I am going to have a point on Danny Noppert, Ryan Joyce to go over 4.5 sets at 15-8. I'm quietly confident on Nick Kenny to beat Raymond van Barneveld, although I'll give a bit of... for clarity, I probably would trade Kenny if he gets ahead in that game, just because he could get finishing line nerves quite feasibly given what's on the line. But I think if you take that 19-10, I really do foresee a situation where he's a lot shorter in running there. And then the final game of the night, Damon Heta and Connor Scutt, I think is going to be an absolute 180 fest. So I'm backing both to hit over 4.5 at 13-10. Again, that's via the Bet365 Bet Builder tool. Okay, well, that concludes your Saturday preview of the action at Ali Pali. I hope you enjoyed this video, and hopefully you'll have some better results than yesterday. Let me know what you fancy in the comments for today's matches and how you're finding the tournament so far, and any outright or quarter picks as well. I'd love to hear from you what you're thinking of backing. I will be back tomorrow morning to preview Sunday's action at Alexandra Palace, which is the penultimate day of pre-Christmas action. Have a good one, and I'll see you again very soon.